Apple's 13-inch MacBook Pro has now been refreshed for 2020, but it seems like all the attention is on the higher-end $1,800 model, since that's the model that features Intel's latest 10th-gen processors. But I think people are way over-exaggerating how important those chips really are. I've even seen people recommending the 2020 MacBook Air over the base MacBook Pro just because of the 10th-gen processors, which is a massive mistake, and I'll explain why in just a minute. Now, I'm not saying that the new $1,800 MacBook Pro isn't a great choice. In fact, I think it's definitely worth the extra $500 over the 2020 base model, mainly because you get a 512 gig SSD and 16 gigs of RAM included, which those upgrades used to cost $400 alone. And on top of that, you get other great features like much better speakers, better cooling thanks to an extra fan, 2 extra ports, and of course, better performance. But the reality is that not everyone wants to spend almost $2,000 for a MacBook. And for those who can afford the $1,300 Pro, they'll be making an excellent choice, despite the 8th-gen processor and what reviewers are saying about it. I personally think the real mistake is thinking that the 2020 MacBook Air with the quad-core i5 or even the i7 processor will have better performance than this base MacBook Pro thanks to the all-powerful 10th-gen chip. But that's simply not true. The main reason for that is because Apple decided not to connect the MacBook Air's fan to the CPU's heatsink. So even the dual-core i3 model hits 100 degrees Celsius relatively quickly, let alone the i7. And when we ran our CPU stress test, the MacBook Air suffered because of the lack of cooling, with the base MacBook Pro pulling way ahead. So here's my take on the MacBook Air versus the MacBook Pro. If you care about performance whatsoever, buy the base MacBook Pro instead. So that means if you're considering the quad-core i5 model of the MacBook Air, you actually do care about performance, so buy the base MacBook Pro instead. Trust me, it will perform much better despite the 8th-gen chip, and the fans will stay quieter as well. And yes, the long-awaited 14-inch MacBook Pro is in the works, but more and more rumors and leaks are pointing to at least a spring 2021 release date, and the reality is that a lot of people aren't going to wait that long. So let's get into why I think this 2020 base 13-inch MacBook Pro is still a great choice right now. First off, the main issue with the 2019 model was the butterfly keyboard, and that is now fixed with the 2020 model since it gets the new Magic Keyboard. And there truly is a massive difference in the quality of the keyboard and everything from key travel and typing experience to reliability as well. And another nice addition is that we now get a physical escape key, so it's much more convenient to use than before. But other than with the keyboard, you won't find any other physical difference except for the tiny increase in weight and thickness compared to the 2019 model. Well, of course, it'd be nice to have that 14-inch redesign right now, but we can't blame Apple because the 14-inch model was never anything more than rumors from the supply chain. And then blogging sites took those rumors and decided to get everybody hyped up, making them think that it's coming this year. So we shouldn't blame Apple. We should actually be thanking them because this base 8th-gen model has become a much better deal, especially for those who want 16 gigs of RAM. With the 2019 model, if you wanted 256 gigs of storage and 16 gigabytes of RAM, you'd have to spend $1,700 to get it. But now, the 256 gig SSD is already included in the base price, and upgrading to 16 gigs of RAM is now only a $100 upgrade. So you're saving $300 compared to last year to get the same specs. And you're getting the reliable Magic Keyboard, which is even more important for some people. So we definitely are getting a pretty good value this year with the base MacBook Pro, but there's one question left that we need to answer. Does the old 8th generation chip make this MacBook Pro a bad choice? Well, if you've seen our recent $1,300 versus $1,800 2020 MacBook Pro comparison video, you'll know that the 10th gen chip isn't massively faster than the base 8th gen like everyone is making it sound like. We only saw around a 12% higher Geekbench 5 CPU score on the 10th gen, which translated to around 24% better performance in the Cinebench R20 stress test. Now that is a decent improvement, but if you don't have $1,800 to spend on a MacBook Pro, you're still getting very impressive processing performance with the base model that'll actually be enough for a wide variety of people like programmers, photo editors, Logic Pro users, and maybe even video editors. Now the big difference between these two is graphics power, where we saw a 48% higher Metal graphics score on the $1,800 model. This is actually a really big difference, but keep in mind that this will only improve graphics work like video editing and 3D rendering, so photo editors, programmers, and Logic Pro users won't see any significant performance gains from the extra graphics power. And even for video editing, running the Bruce X test, the $1,800 model was surprisingly only 20% faster than the base model, a much smaller difference than we expected, so the base model keeps up surprisingly well. But one thing that the better graphics in the higher end model does improve is gaming performance. Greg from Greg's Gadget showed off how the $1,800 model was able to play some games at decent frame rates like League of Legends, Counter-Strike Go, Fortnite, and more. But keep in mind that he ran each of these games at 1440 by 900 resolution, which is only 31% of the MacBook Pro's native resolution of 2560 by 1600. So if you want decent FPS for gaming while at higher resolutions, then you're either going to have to go for a 16-inch MacBook Pro, which has a dedicated graphics card, or you'll have to set up an eGPU instead. And if you do go the eGPU route, it actually makes much more sense to buy the base $1,300 model with 16GB of RAM for $1,400, since the eGPU takes the integrated graphics of the Intel chips out of the equation completely. So if you're interested to see how that will perform, then click the subscribe button and enable notifications because that video is coming soon. The point I'm trying to make is that the difference in performance between this base model and the higher end $1,800 model isn't as big as people are making it out to be. The base model has more than enough performance for those who can't afford to spend $1,800 on the higher end MacBook Pro. However, for some people, spending the extra cash really does make a lot of sense, like for video editors or people who want more value thanks to the other improvements like better speakers, faster RAM, and 2 more ports. But if you can't see yourself spending that much cash, don't feel bad about choosing the base model instead. I would just strongly recommend upgrading to 16GB of RAM for only $100. It's an excellent deal, and it'll help for everything from video editing, programming, photo editing, Logic Pro 10, and also for people like me who love having a lot of Chrome tabs open at once. So with the base MacBook Pro, you're getting a bright display with great P3 color gamut, you'll get the new reliable Magic Keyboard, an excellent trackpad, more storage than before, and much better real-world performance than any of the MacBook Airs, even the i7 model. Now, if you're someone who already has a laptop that's working just fine, and you can easily wait a full year for the 14-inch redesign, then I would recommend doing so. But for everyone else who can't wait that long, the base MacBook Pro is an excellent laptop for the price. If you enjoyed this review, go ahead and tap the like button and click the circle above to subscribe so you don't miss out on those eGPU videos coming soon. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.